Hey y'all, today we're going to be making some Natchitoches meat pies. Now, I know that's a funny looking word and it does not look like it sounds, but I promise you that is the way you pronounce it. It is pronounced Natchitoches, so just trust me on that one. Okay, so what we're going to need is some celery, some green onion, regular onion, which it actually called for Spanish onion, but I didn't have that. I had yellow onion, so that's what I'm using, and then red bell pepper. So those are the vegetables that is going to go into our meat pie filling. Now, I don't need as much as what's sitting here. You only need a little bit of each, but I went ahead and cut everything up, and that way it was done, it wasn't wasted, and I could just put it over in the freezer and have it for next time I wanted to make these. So you're going to need, and I'm going to have all of this written out down in the description box for y'all, but you're going to need a quarter of a cup of celery. You're going to need a half a cup of green onions, a half a cup of the regular onion, and then half a cup of red bell pepper. And make sure you chop these up really fine because these are small little meat pies, little hand pies, so you don't want huge chunks of vegetables in there. Now, this is my daughter's recipe. So I'm trying to be good and measure everything out because y'all know I don't normally spend this much time measuring things, but I wanted it to turn out good. I wanted to do it the way that she told me I needed to do it. So that's what I'm doing. So just get all your stuff all chopped up, and then we're just going to sit that over to the side until we get ready for it, okay? And she also insisted that I make the real dough to make the pies out of, but I'm going to show you an alternative to that also. But you know what? I was trying to be good and listen, y'all. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of butter to your pan. I'm using my cast iron skillet. You can use whatever skillet you have. And then once your butter is melted, go ahead and dump your vegetables right over in there. We're going to need to let these vegetables kind of cook down till they're soft, but we're going to add our meat in here also so we can get everything cooking. So the meat that you're going to need for this is half of a pound of ground beef and half of a pound of ground pork. Now, don't panic. I promise I'm washing my hands in between all this meat touching and all that kind of stuff. I'm not contaminating the house. Don't worry. I know some of y'all worry, but don't worry. It'll be fine. So, like I said, half a pound of each. Now, that was about 1.5 pounds of pork in that package, so I'm using about 1/3 of that. And I'm just kind of trying to crumble it up because I don't want to smash my vegetables too much while I'm trying to chop the meat, you know. So you're going to go ahead and just let that cook until your vegetables are kind of soft and your meat is done. And then you want to drain off any excess grease that you have. Then we're going to go ahead and add in about 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, and about 1 tablespoon of hot sauce. And then I also added, mix that up, y'all. But then I'm also going to add a little bit of salt and pepper and some cayenne pepper. I think I cut out the adding of the cayenne because clearly you don't see it here, but add a little cayenne too. And that's just to taste, just salt and pepper to taste. You know, once your meat's done and everything, just taste it, and whatever you need to add extra, you can. So in a small little bowl, we're going to take 1/2 cup of beef broth and 1/8 cup of all-purpose flour. And we're going to mix that up real good, kind of make a slurry out of it. And then we're going to add that to our filling. And that way we got a little moisture in there because you don't want it to be like super dry when you bite into this meat pie. So just add that in there. Then you're going to need to let that come up to a boil. And then we're going to just cut the heat down, let it cook for just a couple of minutes, stir it constantly so it doesn't stick. And then we're going to take it off the heat. And like I said, adjust the seasoning if you need it, and then just set it aside and let it come to room temp. Now for our dough, you're going to need 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, the next ingredient after this is where they almost lost me on this recipe because I don't really use lard. But this recipe calls for 1/2 cup of lard. And like I said, I'm trying to follow the recipe, so I used it. And the rest of it is still in my cabinet because I have not used it since. So anyway, you're going to just let this mix until you just got tiny little, pieces down in there. Just let it mix up real good till it breaks that lard up. All right, so to a bowl, you're going to need to add 1 cup of milk and 1 egg, and mix that egg up real good into your milk. Then we're going to add this kind of slowly over into our dry mix. We're going to let that mix up until it is just combined. Now, you don't want to over mix it and end up with tough dough. But so when you get ready to turn this out onto your counter, it's still going to be a little bit crumbly, so don't worry about that. And y'all can see that I recorded this a while back, and I'm just getting around to posting it for y'all, but you can see that I had not at this point bought my handy dandy beautiful mat for my counter yet. So just bear with me while I struggle getting this dough done. So what I did was half of this batch. So I took the other half of that dough and I wrapped it in plastic wrap and put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in my freezer. And that way I'll have it for next time. So what you're going to need to do is go ahead and roll your dough out. And you're going to roll it till it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now, I didn't have enough room to roll mine out as big as I needed to, because again, I was working with kind of limited space when I was doing this. So I'm going to cut them and then I'm going to roll them out a little bit more after I cut them. You're going to see all that in just a minute. Now, here's my very fancy cutter right here. It's about 4 or 5 inches, I believe. But you're just going to cut those out until you run out of dough. So once you peel all that extra dough off, roll that back out and then cut until you've cut all the dough. You know what I'm saying? So you see here, like I said, mine were a little bit thicker than I wanted them to be. So I just went ahead and rolled them out a little bit more with this little, I love this little rolling pin. It's perfect for little tiny things like this. I got it, I think it's Pampered Chef, y'all, but if I can find a similar one on Amazon, I'll link it for y'all because it's really nice to have. All right, now that our meat has come to room temperature and we've got our little dough all rolled out, we're going to go ahead and add a pretty big heaping tablespoon of mixture to our dough. And we're going to do this for each of our, little things. And like I said, this is a half. I'm only used half the recipe. So I froze half the dough and I also froze half of this meat. So you can definitely do that if you just want to make a few, if you don't have a lot of people to feed, and that way you have the extra. Or you can just have the recipe if that's what you want to do. So you're going to take a little water, put it around the edges of your dough, and then you're going to press the edges of your dough down on each other. Just be careful that your mixture's not coming out, and unsticks the dough. And then you're just going to crimp that with a fork and make sure it's good and sealed. And we're going to do this to all of our little meat pies until we get them all used up. So then I put a piece of parchment paper on my air fryer rack, and you're going to add all your little pies on there, and then we're going to spray them with some cooking spray, and you're going to air fry those at 350 for about 15 to 18 minutes. Just kind of watch them after 15, because everybody's air fryer is a little different. So I wanted to show y'all this. My son is not a fan of traditional Natchitoches meat pies. So what I do for him, and I've done it since I don't even know how long, for years and years, is I take leftover roast, and this has got onions and peppers and all that good stuff in it, and I just chop it up really small, and this is some leftover gravy. I know it looks awfully jiggly, but it is leftover. And I am going to take a roll of crescent dough, and this is what I was going to tell y'all that you can use as an alternative if you don't want to make the traditional dough for the meat pies, which I do suggest make them at least once because it's really, really good. You can definitely use this to make, things a little bit easier, or if you don't have, the ingredients for the other, you can certainly do like this and it will work just fine. So I roll it out and then I cut this out, cut all my little pieces out just like we did with the other ones. And then what I do is, like I said, I chop up the roast real fine because you don't want huge strings of roast in these little bitty pies. You're going to add, like the same amount to your, each little pie. But then I took a little bit of that gravy we had left over and I put just a little bit of gravy over top of each one. And that way it won't just be dry roast and bread. You know what I'm saying? And you can also thin that gravy out a little bit and dip your meat pies into the gravy. But y'all, this is what they look like when they come out. Now, this is the Natchitoches meat pie that you're looking at right now. For some reason, I did not get a video after I cut one open for y'all, but I am throwing the picture right here for y'all, doing a little zoom action. Y'all, these things are delicious. If you've never had one, you've got to either make them yourself like I did, because they're really good like that, or go buy you one if you can get your hands on some, because they're super, super good. And these ones with the roast in them, oh my gosh, y'all, so, so, so good. They may not look like a lot, but they are delicious. So that is all I've got for y'all today. I will pop y'all another video over here, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.